Folks, while you're taking your seats, I want to say something that's not on the program. In fact, I walked in and Brad said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "What are we going to do?" And I had put together some thoughts, and he said, "Let's do it my way." And so I want to get this in, though, absent his twist. So this is my way. Someone said Brad's persuasive and persistent, and he is. And he asked me if I would be a part of this group. And I said, "Sure, what group? And what do they do?" And I didn't know until tonight what we did. Now I have a better idea. But that has, about a few weeks ago, Brad asked me if I would be the keynote speaker to BYU Honor Week. And there was a gathering, and I speak, and I said, "Sure." Now that I'm retired and released, I can say sure easily. Too easily, is what I've learned. And I said, "What do you want me to talk on?" He said, "We'll talk on honor." I said, "Sure." And I told you I was the exec for Honor and Ethics over the Air Force Academy, so I thought I knew everything. And so I started preparing for a talk on honor for an hour or so. And there's very little written on honor. I Googled it. I didn't do masterful research, but I was astounded at how little is written on honor. I got an MBA from Ohio State a long time ago, and I thought, what did I learn on honor at Ohio State? Nothing. Football. I learned that was there while Woody Hayes was there, and I learned a lot about honor as a cadet at the Air Force Academy. But I want to tell you, there's great need for written information in academic areas about the critical nature of honor. And finally, my bottom line to my talk, that hour talk I gave, was integrity, honor, honesty are absolute requirements for success. And you're hard-pressed to find that written anywhere. You find it written in the newspapers or what the people expect, but it's not demanded. And no student should ever graduate from any business program in any school in the country without understanding there's high penalty for dishonor and lack of integrity. And you're hard-pressed to go find that. And so I'm now excited to be a part of this group if we can further some way an understanding. Organizations, people, not expect, demand ethics, ethical behavior, honesty, and integrity. No student should ever think that he can, and there's too many examples of people that have done pretty well on paths of dishonor, but it always ends up in the same pile, junk. Same pile, junk. Lack of integrity, lack of honesty, lack of honor. So I'm excited to be here. Now that was my way.
I never questioned who was the boss. I love this man. I love this man deeply. And I've been looking forward to this opportunity to talk to General Elder Oaks. Actually, this is the hardest part, is trying to figure out what to call him. I got to know him when he had just retired as a 4-star general, where his last duty station was head of U.S. Forces Europe and head of NATO forces, Air Forces Central Europe. And he moved into our ward in Pittsburgh, and so it was Brother Oaks. And then he became the stake president. And then it was President Oaks. But it was still always General Oaks. It's one of those titles that doesn't go away. And then I had the opportunity to serve on the High Council under his leadership. Wonderful experience. And then, of course, he was called into the 70 of the LDS Church. And then he was called into the presidency of the 70. So now he's Elder Oaks. So it's wonderful to be with Bob Oaks, Brother Oaks, President Oaks, General Oaks, Elder Oaks.
Thank you.
he's a wonderful leader, and I thought it'd be kind of fun just to talk a little bit about some of his leadership experiences and some of the insights that he has into leadership and honor. So I've just got a few questions. I think he's going to let me do my part now. We'll see.
Almost.
We'll see.
I was excited to talk about leadership. I talk about it often to different groups. And I said, sure. And then I got your summary of who you are and the positions you're serving in and have served in. And I said, I'm talking to that group about leadership? Come on. But it was too late to back out. Now, your turn.
Wonderful. Okay, so one of my favorite stories that you've shared, so I've heard most of his stories, and they're wonderful, and so I wanted you to hear some of these stories. One of the stories I enjoy is the story you tell about being shot down as a fighter pilot. And you talk about the importance of the training and preparation that you had done and how important that was for that experience for you. Would you tell us about that?
Well, you said you've heard most of my stories, and that's not true. And I wish we had more time, and I'd tell you a whole new set of stories. But this is a great story about training. I was a captain in an F-100 squadron in Louisiana, and we got our orders to go to Vietnam as a squadron. And so the squadron training officer started putting a training program together for us to go to Vietnam. And one day he said, come on in, I got a movie to show. And he brought us in and he showed us this movie. And it was on free fall. And it started off with a guy in a balloon at 100,000 feet. Nobody goes, you're an astronaut at 100,000 feet. You get your wings, you get astronaut wings if you go to 100,000 feet. And nobody goes up there. You have to wear a full pressure suit above 50,000 feet. And this guy was falling, and it showed him tumbling and spinning, and then he spread eagled and he smoothed out, and it showed how to free fall from 100,000 feet. I said to the training officer, that's a crazy thing. We fly at what, 2,500 feet? We're never up there. Why are you showing us all that? Waste my time. And he said, I had to show you something. So we went to Vietnam, and one morning I was asleep. I wasn't on the flying schedule that day, and I love to fly. And my boss came in and woke me up, and he said, Bobby, he said, can you come take my flight? I'm leading a flight of 4, and we're launching in an hour and a half. And he said, I've been up drinking. And I was the designated pilot in the squadron. They knew I was always sober. And so I got a lot of these kind of flights. Wake up early in the morning, yeah, I'll take it. And so I ran down, got ready, and we went off, and we went down into the Mekong Delta. And made contact with the forward air controller, and we're start delivering our ordnance. And I come off on about my 3rd pass, and I got a fire warning light on, and that means just what it says, a fire warning light. So I called Mayday, Silver 01 off with a fire warning light, and my wingman came up and he said, "You're burning badly." And so I started heading for a little outpost over here. Well, I got up to about 2,500 feet, and I was still in control. The airplane was responding to I couldn't see the flame. And so I was feeling pretty good. Then all of a sudden, the stick just went limp in my lap. And all of a sudden, I knew I had to get out. And so you've memorized the bailout procedure, or you've memorized bailout procedures. And the first one is raise your armrest, and that blows the canopy. And the canopy, sure enough, went. And it exposes triggers under each armrest. And then the second step is squeeze triggers, and I squeeze the triggers. And that fires a black powder charge about that size. And you suddenly become literally a cannonball. I mean, it's just like they shoot cannons with. And so it shoots you out, and you're on rails and on the seat. And then you get out, and there's a little thing that throws you out of the seat. Well, it threw me out of the seat, and I started tumbling. And I was tumbling so violently. And all I remember thinking, all I could think is, the human body can't stand this. It'll tear off an arm or a leg. And so I was waiting for an arm or a leg to be torn off. It was that violent. And I couldn't think about the memorized emergency procedures. I couldn't think. I'm there spinning. And as I got up that morning, I prayed. I know my family was praying for me back in the United States. People were praying for me. And all of a sudden, I'm convinced to this day, in response to prayers, it was like a TV screen dropped down in front of me. I mean, it was there. The emergency procedures, the 2 that I'd already accomplished, but then the whole list of them. Number 3 was check parachute. I didn't have one. And said no chute. Number 4 was no chute, pull ripcord. And you've got a D-ring that's the ripcord. So I pulled the ripcord, I got a parachute, just like it was supposed to work. TV screen there. And so I went through the rest of those things. It said the 5 was deploy seat kit. You've got a survival kit strapped to your seat that's about like that. And it's out of fiberglass, hard. You don't want to land with it. It's strapped right to your seat. Deploy seat kit. And I did that because it's supposed to open automatically. So I hit the ground. And afterwards, I went to my training officer and I said, thanks for showing me that. What I didn't tell you. I had an image in my mind along with the TV screen of free falling from 100,000 feet. It works from 10,000 feet, works for 1,000 feet too. And you spread eagle, legs out, arms out, and what does it do? It stopped the tumbling. Just like a skater skinning skater. What do they do to stop? Stick out their arms. And the physics of it is you stop. Well, I stopped, and then I could think and get ready to land. My survival was the TV screen and the image of spread eagle. And so what's the message of all that? Reach out on training. Train more than you have to. And don't listen to the student or the squadron member that says, I don't need that. Think and exercise some judgment. Reach out and overtrain rather than undertrain. I was overtrained until all of a sudden I needed it. And then I had what I needed. Is that
Thank you.
close?
That's wonderful. I'm sorry?
Am I right that yesterday may have been the 50th anniversary of that incident?
You're right. I think, yeah.
50th anniversary of that being shot down yesterday.
You must have been reading this book. This is Believe by Robert C. Oakes.
Now, ethics is oftentimes about dealing with difficult issues and ones where your values are challenged. And you've talked about during the Cold War, you had to work with, negotiate with Soviet generals. And you've told the story of how at one of those meetings, the Soviet general wanted to toast everyone with vodka. And you weren't doing it, and it was a little tense. Tell us about that.
I think this is it's instructive for me. I was on the Incidents at Sea negotiations team. It was a Navy operation, basically, but I was the Air Force representative. I was a colonel at the time. And I was on this with 5 admirals. And we went to Moscow to negotiate with the Russians on incidents at sea things. And then after we finished, we went up to Leningrad, then Leningrad. And we were at a dinner table, a room probably about this size, and probably about the same number of people in it. And I was the only Air Force person there, U.S. Air Force. And it was mostly a Navy operation. There was the commander of the Leningrad Naval District was running this dinner. It was a dinner. And the Russians are big drinkers. And so we eat our dinner quickly so they can get their toasting. And so they get their toasting. Well, I made a mistake. And they toast with vodka, which is like water. And I could have had a glass of water and gotten just smooth through this. But I had some kind of pink lemonade substitute non-alcoholic thing they gave me. And I said, that's fine. So I raised my pink lemonade, and I'm sitting clear in the back of the room. Well, the admiral's sitting up here front, and he looks out and he sees me. I don't know how he saw my pink lemonade, but he did. He said, you, get your vodka. Only he says it through a translator. Get your vodka. And I said, I'm okay. I'm okay. And he said, we're not going on till you get your vodka. I've got a KGB guy here who is my escort, and he is under the gun. And he says, get your vodka. And he knows I don't drink. I mean, we've been together for a couple of weeks, and he knows I don't, but he said, get your vodka. And I said, I'm okay. And the admiral said, we're not going on. And my U.S. Navy guys are starting to look over their shoulder at me and mumbling, get your vodka. And I'm there and I said, shortest prayer, without bowing my head, without closing my eyes, I said, God help me. And instantly, the Russian army captain, who is the translator, sitting at the elbow of the 4-star admiral, says, it's because of his religion. Because he'd asked me, why don't you drink? I told him, and we'd had a lot of conversation about it. And so he knew. And he said, it's because of his religion. The admiral said, okay, let's go on. I mean, it just solved the problem instantly. And we went on. That whole thing that it's taken me this long to talk about probably took 10 seconds. And it was solved. We went on. And I never heard anything more about it from the Russians. Before that, in Moscow, same kind of tension. And the admiral down in Moscow said, get your vodka. I'm back to pink lemonade. And I said, I'm okay. And he said, you're a pilot. I said, I'm a pilot. He said, all pilots drink. And I said, not the great ones. And my escort was a Russian 2-star who was a real drunkard. And everybody knew he was a real drunkard among drunkards. And so immediately when I said, not the great ones, they all turned to him. And the whole focus was there. So the Lord helps us. Now, what's the useful thing of that in leadership? Pick what you are and be what you are, and live with it. Now, all sorts of bad things could have happened to my career. They obviously didn't. And you just have to. What's most important? When I was this is your hand. You deal.
Okay, I will. So you're a 4-star. You're now in charge of U.S. Forces Europe. And the Cold War has ended. And you're waiting for Washington, D.C. to tell you what to do. And then you had an epiphany. Tell us about the epiphany.
If I went to my briefcase and got out my notes on leadership, I'd have several words. The first word on leadership is vision. And it doesn't get realized, but the leader's job is to have a vision of where the organization, regardless of what it is, where the organization should be going, and have a vision, and then set it, and then has to share that vision with everybody in the organization so they're all working toward the same goal. Now, let me go back and answer Brad's question. I was commander of United States Air Forces in Europe and Allied Air Forces Central Europe. And the wall comes down. And what's going to happen? And I had John McCain, Patsy Schroeder, probably 10 congressional members come to my office, and I sat and briefed them at different times. I sat for an hour with the King of Norway, told him what should happen to NATO. Everybody wondered, what's NATO going to do now? You know, the war's gone. It's over. What's NATO going to do? And the congressional people all universally said, we want the peace dividend. We want to bring home all the troops out of Europe now. We want to get out of NATO. And we said, crazy. What's the history of Europe? The history of Europe is a history of war, especially between the Germans and the French. And now for the last 60 years, or whatever it was at that time, what's been the history of Europe? Peace. And what was it under? It was under the umbrella of Europe, under the leadership of the United States. And now you want to get out? You want it to go back like it was for 1,000 years? And I said, that's crazy. And so we said, we've got to we've got to preserve. And then I sit back in my chair in Ramstein, Germany, and I say, what do they want us to do? I had 88,000 troops under us, Air Force troops, and where do they want us to go? And I waited. And I waited for like 3 months for no word from from Washington. What are we supposed to do? I didn't get anything from the Pentagon of any substance, what to do. And one day, I said, wait a minute, what am I waiting for? Who knows more about what Europe, United States forces, air forces in Europe should look like, and how we should be structured and configured and distributed than me? And that wasn't an egotistical thing. I was the boss. I was the commander. So I'd been sitting back wasting time, not understanding my responsibility for vision. So I called one day, I called my I had 3 two-star numbered Air Force commanders and my 2-star planner. And we, the 4 of us, I think we had the chief of staff there, had 5 of us met around a table for a day and decided what United States Air Forces in Europe should look like in terms of how many troops did we need, what kind of airplanes, what kind of force structure, and where they should be. At the end of the day, we had a plan, a very concrete plan that we all felt good about. Now, why did it take me 3 months to sit back and finally decide, I'm supposed to be doing this? And that goes back to vision. And I should have been doing it right from the start. And we got it. And now, incidentally, since that time, all of the actions that have taken place by Air Force in Europe have taken place off of those bases and out of that force structure that we put together that one day. I don't say that boastfully. It's just that we had the right people together to make those decisions. And it was our responsibility to make those decisions. And we made them, and it's worked. It's worked beautifully. And it will. You get the right people together. Right people together. And getting the right people together is a key thing.
So earlier today, I had the opportunity to speak to all the graduating Army cadets from BYU, the University of Utah, and Weber State. And so I used some of my wisdom from my general friend. And I said, one of the things I've always remembered about General Oaks is he said, leadership is about people. So if you don't like people, get out of the leadership business.
And that's true. That's true. If you don't like people, you're in the wrong business as a leader.
And then the second thing is I said, General Oaks says he learned leadership from his mother. And I'll let him tell you what he means by that.
They asked me down to BYU to come talk to the ROTC cadets there and on leadership. And so I was putting together a talk on leadership. And I thought, where did I learn that? Because I was a 3-star at the time, I think, and so I had some leadership credentials. And I said, where did I learn that? And I got thinking back, did I learn it out? I went to Ohio State and took leadership classes. And I'd read leadership things all my life. And I said, did I learn out of those books? What book did I learn out of? And as I really pressed myself, I realized I learned leadership from my mother. How? She taught me how to treat people. She said, treat them kindly, treat them fairly, treat them honestly, treat them like you'd like to be treated. And that's the core of leadership, is treat people kindly and thoughtfully and honestly, how you would like to be treated. And I really believe that. I was looking into my soul, putting that thought together. And I had, to be honest, my mother taught me the core basic leadership values that I was able to reflect through my life.
So as long as we're talking about the importance of women, I'd like you to reflect on the importance of your wife, Gloria, and the teamwork that you had and how that played into your success in your career and in life.
Let me shorten your question just a little bit. Start at the top. My wife has saved my life. She's here with me in the pink, and she saved my life 5 times. I won't take time to tell you about them, but I mean, my life saved. I was dying, and she has saved my life 5 times. So that's the beginning. But also, she has supported me. I've moved her around the world a lot, and we've lived in great places and some other places. We won't go into that. And she has been a team, a great supporter. And now, that's an important leadership principle. Team, build a team. And build a team that complements you. Now, marriage kind of does it naturally, build a complementary team, hopefully. But it doesn't always happen that way. And so building a team, select somebody. If you're a planner and not a speaker, get a vice commander who's a speaker and who can convey and communicate. And if you're a communicator but not a planner, surround yourself with a planner, and you build the team. And it's a thoughtful process. The first start, where do you start? What am I? What am I? What are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? What do I need to complement my weaknesses? And so you build that team. Now, I didn't approach my marriage that way. I want to tell you, it was that kind of thoughtful thing. But that's in fact what you do. Is that I want someone that'll be a good mother to my children, and think of it in those terms. But that's true. That's a basic leadership principle. Is when you get an assignment as a leader, then look around. What's there to work with, and what isn't there, and go find somebody. And I've had great, marvelous successes by looking and saying, what do I need? And go find the person that fills that vacancy that is there in your team. Because you're going to lead as a team. And it might be a team of all tight ends, or it might be a balanced team of 11 different qualities.
You've said before that when you were 70, and you were called to be the area president of Europe, that you looked and realized that your entire career had prepared you for what the Lord needed you to do at that time. Can you tell us about that?
The Lord works in interesting ways, and you all know that. You've had your own private experiences to that. But I was sitting as commander of the United States Air Forces in Europe. I had Europe, and I had all these bases and countries that I was responsible for all Air Force activities and interfaces. And then I did some other things and got called as the area president in the Europe Central area. And I was sitting in my office one time as the president of the Europe area. And I was sitting there and I looked up at the map on the wall of my area of responsibility in the church. And it was exactly, except for Turkey, what I had had when I was commander of the United States Air Forces in Europe. Exactly the same. And they didn't give me Turkey. The church didn't give me Turkey. But they gave me the rest of those things. So I knew all the friction points between the Greeks and the Turks, and I knew Europe. And it was amazing to me. I told Elder Eyring, President Eyring, about that one time, and he said, you thought the Lord had you there, or you thought the Air Force just happened to have you there in Europe. And I did, but it was obviously more. So I was able to approach that job in the church with that background of having served there in the Air Force. Exactly the same.
And now I'm going to prove that you are the boss. So he added a question to my list, and that is to define leadership. You talked earlier about vision. You also talked to me about the importance of training, equipping, and motivating.
It's interesting to find definitions. Like I told you, I looked for definitions and stuff written on honor. But to me, after all the banging around and talking, leadership is vision, as I've said and discussed and explained. Vision, and it's training, and it's equipping, and it's motivating. And if you don't do those, your troops will be frustrated and ineffective. And so you tie all that training, equipping, and motivating together under the vision of where we fit into the bigger organization. And that's leadership.
And that's all my questions. So we've got, we're over time, but if there's maybe one or two questions that are burning out there. Yes, Brother Gardner.
How are we going to get it down to the end of the row? How are we going to take what we do here and make sure it gets down to the end of the row? If it's a management society, that it gets to the members of that society to mentor others and so on.
So the question is, how are we going to get the principles we're talking about to the end of the row? How are we going to get it implemented? Well, that's a pretty good segue to, well, that's tomorrow. But we'll let General Oakes talk about that.
Starts with example. It starts with example. Because the row, you know, getting it to the end of the row is a nice euphemism, but the corn stalks are looking up to see how the leader is acting. So example is a good place to start to get it to the end of the row. But it's highly variant in different types of organization. Organizations have highly varying methods of communication. But example, like honor or like integrity, ethics, if they look up, if those corn stalks look up and see integrity at the top, that's a great start of how to get it to the end of the row. Consistency, consistency. We're all saying the same, singing off the same sheet of music. So every time one of your vice presidents, if you're the CEO, every time one of your vice presidents goes out and talks about a new product, they've got to sing off the same sheet. That's important. So that communications of consistency is an important part of answering your question, I think.
I think that's a great note to end our evening on. Please join me in thanking Elder Oakes for tonight and for a wonderful life and example. Thank you, Elder Oakes.
Great to be with you. Great to be with you.